أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين لا سيما خاتمهم وأفضلهم محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى أهل بيت الطهارة لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين الحجة ابن الحسن عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله الآخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. My elders, my dearest brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بمصاب حسين عليه السلام. Before we move to the eulogy, because tonight also will be mainly eulogy, there's just a couple of things that I'd like to touch on, and also the organizers have also asked me to touch on as well too. And that is, the first thing is to give some thought to the fact that as we have now moved into the new Islamic year, the new Qamari year, the new year after Hijrah, is for us to give some thought to what we would like that year ahead to look like. It is indeed a great tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blessed us to be able to gather here and commemorate the martyrdom anniversary of Imam al-Hussein. And between now and next year, we don't know, we really don't know who's going to be back, who's going to be sitting in this audience, and who will have the tawfiq to partake in it next year. And as a result, perhaps it's worthy for us to think about the kinds of things we'd like to accomplish between now and the Ashura upcoming. Going back to the series that we did, it can be anything. It could be the uncovering and becoming aware of our fitras and beginning to develop and to grow our fitras. We can pick a virtue to look at and actively on a daily basis engage in exercises to help us to become more aware of those things. Any number of things, it doesn't have to be limited to the series. But the idea is to be intentional. You see, when it comes to the issue of Imam al-Hussein, when it comes to the issue of Ashura, it is in its essence and in its foundation, it is an emotional issue. We do sit and we do engage in intellectual dialogue and intellectual discourse, but the foundation of it is emotion. And the thing is, what's funny about the word emotion is that it begins with E, and the second part of it is motion. So therefore, there should be a desire to move. There should be an innate sort of inkling inside of us to move. Let the emotion to be the spark, and after that, let it to be motion to then bring us back towards the next year. Please recite a salawat. The other part of it is more towards my young brothers and sisters. And this I share with you from experience. As we will see tonight, when we do the eulogy and when we recite the Masa'ib, we see that Imam al-Hussein, his companions, and all the men of the camp of the friends of Allah were martyred. And not only were they annihilated, but the enemies of humanity and the enemies of God sought to put out the light of God. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran very clearly, they seek to put out the light of God, but they will never be successful. And it's very interesting that that light of God was not only not extinguished, but from those ashes rose a nation. And that nation rose on the back of the women folk and the orphans and the young ones. And today, the barakah and the outcome of that nation is all of us here today and all around the world who gather every year to remember and commemorate the message of Imam al-Hussein. Not only remember and commemorate the message of Imam al-Hussein, but carry Imam al-Hussein in our hearts all through our lives. And so to my young ones, I would say that looking at the impossible situation that the youngsters in Karbala faced, don't sell yourself short. From personal experience, I will share something with you. And that is that many times you might hear your elders, whether it's election time, whether it's committee time, this, that, you might hear the phrase, the youth are the leader of tomorrow. I'm here to tell you that's a big scam. The youth are the leaders of today. They are not the leaders of tomorrow. With due respect to my elders, if you find elders telling you that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow and they want to suck you in, it only means that they want to sit at the top, control the narrative, and have you on as token. Now, not all my elders, and again, I say this with a lot of love and reverence for my elders. I will never, ever undermine or diminish the efforts of my elders. It is my elders, and I know because I grew up in this community, it is the elders who laid the foundation. But we still haven't broken that cycle. And so I say to my young ones, as we did a few nights in the lectures, that when you want to serve, and you want to serve for Allah, and you want to serve Allah, don't let anything to stand in your way. Make your niyyah, have that courage, have that desire, stand up and serve. You will face difficulties. I repeat, I'm sitting here, I look around, I see former youth leaders, I see my sister Rifat, she also knows what this is about. You face difficulties, and you will face roadblocks. And it's not, in most cases, those roadblocks and those difficulties they don't come from a bad place, but they come from a place of where we'll find those who are still in charge from a place of their own comfort. And the reality is progress comes from moving out of our comfort zones. And it's difficult. I'm sitting in front of you here. I still think I'm a youth many times, but it's really hard for me to come to terms with the fact that I'm 50 years old and people call me uncle. It's very, very difficult still for me to hear. I do think that many times I'm still that youngster at our old center at Bayview, but I'm not. But the thing is that it's very, very important. Take on the responsibility, have that courage. And to my elders, again, I say this with a lot of love. Let the young people to take over. Let the young people to run things. Give them a boundary within which to work and let them to work. The thing is, even I say this to my elders, and today I sit as a parent. In my own parenting skills with my son, many times I have to sit and go back and look at the way I was raised and then compare it to the situation that I see in front of me. And the conclusion that I've arrived at is that in my parenting, I very much like my son to make his own mistakes, to realize that things are trial and error. And the same thing I say to my elders. You came, many of us are immigrants. We came over. We had no one to guide us. We literally came with nothing. And I salute my elders for this. To come to a new country, to start fresh, whether we were economic migrants, whether we were refugees, whatever the case may be. It wasn't easy coming here. And there was no that type of communal helping hand as is available today. And so you did your best. But I also say there comes a point where we have to let go. We have to let go and let the youngsters embark on their own journey and realize that if they're going to get it right, they also have to move by trial and error. They have to learn to make mistakes. Because we as fallible human beings, our pathway to perfection or our pathway to excellence is paved with mistakes. And that is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that in every mistake and every slip up, there is a lesson for us to take from it. If we did not make mistakes and if we did not slip and fall, we would not take the lessons then. And so I really, really appeal to the young people listening today here and listening online. If you want to, step up and serve, take over, put your name forward. And again, understand that if you want anything, if you want goodness in your life, and if you want to serve the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will face difficulty, like anything in life. We should not expect that, for example, if we're on our academic or educational journey, that we're going to succeed without facing difficulties. It's not a situation that if we want to embark and nurture our personal relationships, be it our friends, be it spousal relationships tomorrow, we're not going to face difficulties. No, everything has struggles in it. And serving community for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is probably amongst the highest of callings, So therefore, as it is amongst the highest of callings, expect pushback, expect struggle, but allow that struggle to build character inside of you. So to my young ones, don't be discouraged. Many times I hear, especially amongst my contemporaries, when I speak to many of them, it's phenomenal. My contemporaries have gone on to become, wow, like when it comes to the umur dunyawi, when it comes to the matters of the world, my contemporaries have gone on to become doctors, lawyers, CIOs, directors, this, that. My contemporary generation has been very, very successful. But many times I speak to my contemporaries and say, well, these wonderful things you're doing outside the community, how are you contributing? How are you giving back to the community? And the answer is always the same. Oh, I don't want to deal with the politics. I said, okay, you don't want to deal with the politics, but does that mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater? It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be done through institutions. At least to my contemporaries, give back and continue to give back to our people. This is how we strengthen ourselves as an ummah. This is how we strengthen it. It doesn't, like I said, doesn't have to be through oil, doesn't have to be through ISIJ, doesn't have to be through this. Organize something and make it open for our people. The other thing I would say to my contemporaries is, a few of my contemporaries, and you know who you are, had said to me that during this lecture series, my kids really benefited. It's too late for me. Well, guys, that's also not going to fly. I sit here in front of you. I began my journey, my educational journey, going into accounting and finance. I left accounting and finance and went into marketing. I went into marketing and went into IT, left IT, went into business, and then from business I went to the Hausa, came back, became a life coach, and after life coach became a psychotherapist. So it's not too late. Not too late for any of us. And here I sit in front of you. After 50 years on this earth, I'm here to share with you my journey and the fact that also it's not too late. It's not too late for anybody. Use this opportunity. Whatever time we have on this earth is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, the issue is not an issue of quantity, but it's an issue of quality. And so this is really a heartfelt message to you based on the theme of tonight and how a nation rose from the ashes and from the smoke of disaster, and how that is a source of hope for all of us going forward. Please recite a salawat. So with that, after tonight, we don't seek any lessons or applications any longer. We simply witness the one who showed us that even in our deepest grief, even when everything we love has been taken away, we can choose to remain conscious, to remain caring, to remain completely human in service of preserving what can never be destroyed, which is our humanity. Tonight we remember one of the greatest ladies in our history. Tonight we remember the night when Lady Zainab became the keeper of Karbala's light. The sun had set, but there was no moon. There were no stars, and there was no breeze. Only the smell of burning tents, the cries of children, and the sounds of hoofs trampling the bodies of saints. The sands of Karbala, stained red by day, now blackened under the night shadow. Sham-e-Ghariban. Sham-e-Ghariban is a Persian word used also in the Urdu language. In Arabic, this term is also known as Laylatul Wahsha. This is the night of the destitute. The battlefields stretch before them like a graveyard of dreams, each fallen body, a father, a brother, a son who had kissed his family goodbye that morning, never to return. The silence was more terrifying than the battle had been. At least during the day, there had been sounds of courage, the clash of swords defending truth, voices raised in prayer, the thunder of horses carrying their riders towards paradise. Now there was only the terrible quiet of aftermath, broken by the distant laughter of those who had forgotten they would answer to God. History says that the tents of the Ahlul Bayt were pillaged. The enemies snatched the earrings from the ears of young girls and tore veils from the women's heads. They set the tents of the family on fire and looted everything that was in them. Imagine this scene that should make every heart that ever felt violated cry out in recognition. These were not military targets or strategic positions. These were private spaces where mothers had comforted children, where families had shared their final meals together, where little girls had played just hours before. The enemies moved through these sacred spaces like locusts, grabbing whatever caught their eye. Earrings that had been gifts from their loving fathers were ripped from their tender young ears. Veils that had represented dignity and protection were torn away as trophies. Children's toys, family heirlooms, even the simple belongings that make a tent feel like home, all of it was scattered, stolen, or destroyed. But the cruelest theft wasn't of material things. They were trying to steal dignity itself, to reduce the family of the Prophet to the level of common prisoners, to make them forget who they were. They had no idea that dignity was something no earthly force could ever take from these souls. The fire caught quickly. Children screamed. Mothers rushed to shield them. Sparks flew into the night like unanswered dua. This was deliberate cruelty, the systemic destruction of everything that might provide comfort to already suffering hearts. Zainab ran through the flames. Any ordinary person facing such devastation might collapse, might retreat into shock, might be paralyzed by the magnitude of loss. But this was the daughter of Ali. Zainab had learned what we've been exploring together, that when our hearts are truly surrendered to Allah, even our breaking becomes a form of worship. She gathered the children with her bare hands, her robe torn, her veil was stolen, but her strength unmatched. She found Ruqayya sobbing alone near the battlefield. Picture this little girl, no more than 3 years old, who had watched her father ride out that morning with a smile and promised to return. She had spent the day listening to sounds she couldn't understand, the clash of metal, the cries of men, the thunder of horses. Now she stood in the darkness calling for a voice that would never answer again. Zainab knelt beside her, this woman whose own heart was drowning in grief and somehow found the strength to become a safe harbor for this little storm-tossed soul. She wrapped her in what remained of her own torn robe, whispered the names of God with pride and that bring comfort, held her close enough that the child could feel a heartbeat still keeping rhythm with love. She found Sukaina calling out for Baba again and again. The cry of Baba in the darkness. Is there any sound more heartbreaking? Every parent listening to this knows that particular call, usually answered immediately with open arms and reassuring words. But tonight, each cry echoed unanswered across the empty desert, a prayer thrown into silence. Sukaina, barely 4 years old, had inherited her father's sensitivity and her grandfather's nobility. She had spent the day trying to be brave for the young children, but now in the darkness her courage finally cracked. She called for the one person who had always been able to make everything right, not understanding that some kinds of hurt are too big for any earthly comfort to heal. Zainab found her wandering among the bodies, still calling, still hoping. Without a word, she took the child's hand and led her back toward what remained of their shelter. Sometimes love speaks clearly through presence than through any words anyone could offer. She found Ali ibn al-Hussein, Imam Sajjad, too weak to rise, burning with fever, barely breathing. Here lay the future of their entire mission, the son who would carry forward everything his father had died to preserve. But he was just a young man. Some narrations say maybe 22 years old, whose body was fighting a fever that had kept him from the battlefield. Now he lay helpless, struggling for each breath, unaware that he had become the sole surviving male link in a chain of light stretching back to the Prophet himself. Zainab approached her nephew with the tenderness of a mother and the awareness of someone who understood the weight of divine responsibility. She had lost her brother, her sons, her companions, but here was the one Allah had chosen to preserve. In her care for his burning forehead, in her gentle words of comfort, she was tending not to just a sick young man, but the future of the entire spiritual legacy. I saw Zainab, daughter of Ali, tending to the wounds of the children, wrapping their feet in cloth, whispering in their ears, "Do not cry. Your father gave everything for God," is what the narrators say. The wind carried the scent of ash and blood. The sky refused to shine. The earth refused to speak. And the head of Imam al-Hussein on a spear. She doesn't turn away. She doesn't pretend it isn't happening. She doesn't retreat into denial or shock. She looks directly at what has been done and chooses to transform even this ultimate violation into witness for truth. These simple actions, finding a pole, propping up shelter, covering frightened children, might seem unremarkable to those who have never faced complete devastation, but they represent the most profound spiritual achievement possible. The choice to keep creating sanctuary when everything safe has been destroyed, to keep nurturing life when death seems to have won. With no men left to protect them, no material resources, no certainty about tomorrow, Zainab became both mother and father to these orphan souls. She created walls from her own body, roof from her own strength, warmth from her own heart that somehow kept beating despite being shattered. And when she could take it no more, she stood up on the plains of Karbala and turned to the skies. Rabbana taqabbal minna hadha al-qurban. Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice. Here is a woman who has lost everything, her brother, her sons, her home, her security, her very identity as she knew it. Everything that makes life worth living has been torn away from her in a single day. And her response is not complaint, is not despair, is not questioning Allah's justice. Her response is ultimate expression of what we've been exploring throughout this series. Complete surrender, born from complete humanity. She feels everything, the grief, the loss, the physical pain, the terror of the children's future, but she brings all of it into her conscious relationship with divine purpose and says, accept this sacrifice from us. This is the voice of someone who has learned that our highest spiritual achievement is not the absence of pain, but the transformation of pain into prayer. As the night continued to play out, as Sayyidah Zainab started to account for the children one by one and gather them and provide them sanctuary, as she got together with the other ladies who had been there and got everyone together, she began to account for each and every one of them. And once she began to account for each and every one of them, she does a remarkable thing. Narrators report at the time of parting from her brother, Imam al-Hussein gave her a piece of advice, said to her, "My sister Zainab, whatever happens after me, do not abandon the night prayer." How this blessed lady, in all her strength, in all the chaos, in all the scattering, was able to have presence of mind. And in that moment, once everyone was accounted for and taken care of, she sat down and said her night prayer, remembering Allah in that moment, from ashes, from smoke to ashes, setting the stage for the rise of a community. Allah la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimeen, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.